For many people, technology has become the #1 resource of getting more knowledge, skills, and many other things nowadays. That's why we are proud to provide our new mega project, Vigor Digital Learning Hub, VDLH. VDLH is a digital service that helps organizations to continue their learning journeys for their employees by providing learning solutions that needed for mastering different knowledge and skills for greater performance through various updated and important topics. We are providing digital learning services like webinars, virtual simulations, online assessments, live sessions, virtual conferences and exhibitions, virtual reality, business consultation, and coaching sessions. VDLH providing tailored training topics that will help HR organizations to boost up their learning performance and engagement. We are providing personal skills, business topics, relationship skills. VDLH is providing their learning in different digital tools that will support the learning solutions with the most efficient ways to deliver a full learning experience. The #1 rule of achieving your goal is taking action, and with VDLH, we will make sure that every single action you take will be calculated, effective, and always supported by us. Start now. Contact us for more details. VDLH, Endless Learning.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Ramadan Mubarak. Please type yes in the chat box if you can hear us. Please type yes in the chat box if you can hear us. We are really excited for today, and as we promised you, we are providing the webinar number 5 for a series of webinars that we are providing as a part of our responsibilities at Vigor Enterprise to help everyone to overcome this tough time. We also proud to introduce our new mega project, VDLH, Vigor Digital Learning Hub, our new digital service that will help individuals, organizations to continue their learning journey anytime, anywhere in the world. And now, we would like to welcome our guest for our webinar for today, Mr. Ali Derisavi. Ali is an accomplished senior management consultant, trainer, author, executive coach, and change agent with more than 20 years of experience working with local, regional, and multinational organizations. He is author of It Doesn't Work Here and Conversation with a Visitor. Please welcome Mr. Ali Derisavi.
Good day, everyone. Today we have only 1 hour, so I'm just going to go ahead and start. I think we're going to have 10 to 15 minutes for questions and answers at the very end of this webinar. So if you have any questions, you can just type them in the chat box next to the, I don't know where you have it on your screen, but just type your question and then I'm going to try to answer these questions at the very end. Meanwhile, I'm going to ask you some questions so you can go ahead and answer in the chat box. I can see your answers. I usually start my presentations with a very short story about myself. When I was a kid in elementary school, my parents used to tell me that if I work hard and study hard, they're going to send me abroad to further my studies. And as a kid, like I guess everybody else, we used to watch this TV shows, especially the American TV shows, with UFOs and robots and, you know, cars talking. And there were some Japanese cartoons too, with UFOs coming from outer space and so on. So when I used to see this, I used to think that those people abroad, where my parents want to send me, are so smart. And I used to think that I'm not as smart because I can never come up with a robot or a car that talks and so on. So whenever my parents, thinking that they're motivating me, told me that we're going to send you abroad to further your studies, I used to feel scared from inside, because I used to feel that if I ever go there, I'm not going to be able to compete with those people because they're way smarter than me. I had this feeling until I got to high school. Now, when I got to high school, I realized something. Before I tell you what I realized in high school, there's a question that I want to ask you. It's a poll, and I want you to answer. I think the screen is going to be there for 30. The question is going to be there for 30 seconds, so you can just go ahead and answer. It's a yes and no question. So the question is, do you think all human beings are born with more or less the same level of intelligence? Yes or no? Now let's see what you think. Okay, so I think we're done. It's like 51% think yes, we all are born with the same level of intelligence, and 48% think that we are not born with more or less the same level of intelligence. See, ladies and gentlemen, a very simple definition of intelligence is the ability to solve problems. So the more problems you solve, the more complex problems you are able to solve, the more intelligence you are considered to be. And for those of you who do not think that people are born with more or less the same level of intelligence, I think if you go and research this, because I did research that, I think God has given us the same machine to everybody. It doesn't matter where you're born, whether you're born in Africa or in Asia or in the United States or in Germany, God has given you the same machine. Now, what happens to this machine later is what makes the difference. But we're going to assume that the 51% are correct, and we're going to go ahead. So we said that intelligence. So my realization in high school, I came to this realization that yes, God has given us the same machine, and we all have the ability or the intelligence. Now, when I realized that, that fear that I told you about turned into a question. And the question was, so I was not afraid to go abroad anymore. I was not afraid that I'm not as intelligent as those people in the West anymore. But I had a question. And the question was, if God has given us all the same level of intelligence, more or less. Now, I don't want to get into details of intelligence because just between brackets, I mentioned that there are some new studies led by a psychologist called Howard Gardner. He suggests that we have multiple intelligences: logical, mathematical intelligence, musical intelligence, natural intelligence, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, linguistic intelligence, and so on. And he believes that one person cannot have all of them. We have one or two dominant intelligences, close brackets. So if my question was, if people of the world have the same level of intelligence, more or less, why then we have a group of intelligent people that are called the developed world or developed nations? And then why do we have a group of yet intelligent people that are called developing world? And why do we have a third group of intelligent people, but together they are called the underdeveloped world? So this was the question that I've been carrying for the past over 30 years and try to find answers. Now, I did find around 30 major differences, 30 major differences that differentiate the developed world and the developing and the underdeveloped world. I'm going to share one with you. See, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, intelligence is the ability to solve problems. This is the simplest definition of intelligence and probably one of the most accurate. Now, this is not my definition. There's a book written by another psychologist, very famous. Unfortunately, I forgot his name now, but he has a book called How the Mind Works. And this definition is there somehow. Anyways, the simplified version of his definition is this: the ability to solve problems. Now, going back, if we are all intelligent, why a group of intelligent people become developed and another group of intelligent people do not they do not achieve that development? See, if when I say I, ladies and gentlemen, I mean I, Ali, a person from the developing nation or the developing world. I do not, when I say developing, I do not mean all. I do not speak in absolute terms, mostly. And when I say West or the developed world, I do not mean all. I do not speak in absolute terms, mostly again. Okay? So when I face a problem, I solve it because I'm intelligent. Now, if my peer in, say, Germany faces the same problem, he will solve it because he is intelligent. So far we are equal. Now what happens next is the problem. When I solve a problem, I walk, I continue. So if somebody asks me, if somebody faces the same problem that I faced 6 months ago and asks me about the solution, I try to remember how I solved the problem and I try to tell him something. Now, say 3 months later, somebody else faces the same problem and then she comes and asks me about the solution. I'm going to tell her something, but it is not necessarily the same thing I told my friend because I sometimes forget and I do not remember. Now, I spent in an organization, say, 20 years. I keep on facing problems and solving problems and facing problems and solving problems. Now, where do I save all these solutions? In my head. Now, after 25 years, probably I'll retire. Now, 20, 15 years later, I die. Where do the solutions go? To the grave. Right? Now I can see that we have a lot of friends, Egyptian friends. In Egypt, they have a saying that reflects this reality. I'm going to say it in Arabic and I'm going to translate it. They say, العلم في الراس, مش في الكراس. And this is very true. And it's a reflection of our reality, the East, the reality of the East. not of today, but of the ancient East, ever since the cradle of civilizations, the Egyptians, the Persians, and so on. We did not, unfortunately, document anything. We did very little, okay, in comparison to the Greeks, for example. Now, if we go back to our friend in Germany who faced the same problem, this person faces the problem, but does not go on like I did. This person stops and asks a very important question. He would say, how did I solve this problem? If you have taken project management or you work on project, you know that after you finish the project, there is a very important step called lessons learned. When you finish the problem or the project, you have to sit and think back and see what is it that you learned from this project. So this is what they exactly do. So our friend in Germany faces the problem, solves the problem, but stops and asks, how did I solve this problem? Now, what he does, he turns the solution into a sequence of steps. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm going to ask you, you can write it down in this chat box. What would you call a sequence of steps to do something? Those of you who want to write it in Arabic, I don't know if I can see the Arabic text, but you can go ahead. What would you call a sequence of steps to do something? Process, instruction, SOPs, exactly, standard operating procedures, processes, procedures. Great. I'm still waiting for the word that I use usually, but they all mean the same. Okay, processes. Great. See, ladies and gentlemen, a sequence of steps to do something. So we said our friend in Germany faces the problem, turns the problem into a sequence of steps that you can call process, procedure, methodology, method, model, structure, whatever you want to call it. I like to use the name system. System. So our friend in Germany solves the problem, turns the solution into a system, then documents the system. Documents the system. So if somebody 6 months down the road faces the same problem and asks him, how did you solve the problem? This person simply hands the document with the system, with the process, right? 6 months down the road, somebody else faces the same problem. He will give her the same document, the same process. If they hire 2,000 people in one day, all of them will follow the same process or system. If our friend leaves the company and dies, it doesn't really matter. Why? Because something is left behind. He left his system behind. Okay, now this is a major difference, again, going back between the developing and the developed world. Now, this is not something that I came up with. If you want later, you can go and check the number of books, for example, thought production, that is published in a country like the United Kingdom. I think last I checked was 300,000 new books a year. Now compare that to any developing country with the same population. There's no comparison. Okay? So turning solutions into systems is extremely important. Now, one more thing they do. They do not only turn the solution into a system and document it, they do something else that I'm going to tell you about it later. Now, if I go to so we did this, what would you call, so we said that we call a sequence of steps to do something, a system. Yes? Now, I want to ask you, if you, in your environment, have systems, meaning for everything you need to do, there is a standard operating procedure, a system, a process, whatever you want, sequence of steps to do it, right? Like McDonald's, probably the most systemized environment in the world is McDonald's. There's a nice book called McDonaldization of the Society, written a long time back, 20 years ago. It's a nice book. You can read it later. It talks about systems at McDonald's. Now, the question is, if in an environment you have system, think of McDonald's. On the opposite end, in an environment where you have no systems whatsoever, what would you have if you have no systems? Think of an environment that is exact opposite of a systematic environment. What would you have? You can answer in the chat box. Dino says chaos. Correct. Correct. Maria says creativity. That's a result. But if you do not have systems, on the opposite end, you have chaos. Yes, mess, chaos. Exactly. Exactly. So you either have systems or you have chaos. Yes? Now, my next question is, and you can answer this, we're gonna have a poll, okay? I'm gonna give you 30 seconds to answer. So in which environment would you have more efficiency? Meaning, in an environment where you come in the morning and you know exactly what you need to do, will you be more efficient? Or in an environment where every day you have to come and discover what is it that you need to do? Where are you going to be more efficient? Can we see the poll results? Systems, almost 100%. Great. Now, next question is, so we all agree that in systems, we have more efficiency. Where do you think, next question, again, you can answer in the poll, where do you think you have more conflicts? When everybody agree that this is what we need to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or where each one of you wants to do his or her own thing? Where would you have more conflicts? Again, 85%. In chaos, of course. When everybody agrees that this is the way to do things, then they come and they just do it and leave. When each one of us wants to do his own thing, then we're going to definitely have conflicts. We're not going to be right and wrong necessarily, but we're just going to be different. Okay, next question is, where do you think I can have more objective evaluation? Now, ladies and gentlemen, before answering this question, let me just give you a very small example. Before answering, let me just give you a small example, 2 minutes. Some of you have been to Starbucks, right? Some of you. Now, when you go to Starbucks, the barista has a system. Some of you have experienced that. I can do a Starbucks barista. Imagine I am a Starbucks barista. Hi, how you doing, sir? What can I get you? Would you like some extra cream, some water? Here is your drink. Have a nice day. Starbucks has a system for their baristas. Connect, discover, expand, respond. Connect, discover, expand, respond. Right? Now, if I am a supervisor in Starbucks, and I see the barista, you walk in as a customer, and I see the barista says, what can I get you? it is so easy for me to go to the barista and tell him or her that you missed the first step. You should have connected first. You cannot jump into discovery. You cannot say, what can I get you? You need to connect first. You need to say, hey, how are you? How you doing? Whatever. Salaam alaikum. Good morning, bonjour, whatever. Next step is to ask or to discover. So it is easy for me to evaluate the performance objectively when there is a system. If there is no system, my objective, my evaluation would be what? Oh, I like what you're doing. I like your job. He's a good player. He's a bad player. Like sometimes I go out with friends to watch football, and then I see some of them evaluate the performance of a coach, for example, that has 30 years of experience, and said, this coach is not good. Then why is he not good? He's just not good because I don't like him. This is not objective evaluation. This is subjective evaluation, right? We cannot do that at work, at least. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So we decided that with systems, we have efficiency, harmony, objectivity, and I forgot to ask you this question, but it's okay. Systems are safe. Chaos, on the other hand, is risky. When you know exactly what you need to do, you are in a safe environment. When you do not know, there is a level of risk that you have to take because you are not sure of the results. Okay? Now, my next question is, again, I want you to answer. Where do you think, in which environment do you think you can be more creative? When you come every day to work and you do the exact same thing? Or when you come and you face new problems and you have to come up with new solutions every day? Where do you think, in which environment do you think you're going to be more creative? Which environment gives you the opportunity to be more creative? Almost 100% believe, now 91, 92, 88, okay. So mostly believe that chaos gives us a better opportunity to become creative. That's true. If you work for McDonald's, the opportunity for you to become creative is very low because you do exactly the same thing every day. Now, working in a chaotic environment, is definitely, or gives you definitely better opportunities to be creative. I think we all agree, 79% agree. Okay, now, so now we see that in a systematic environment, it's efficient, harmonious, we're objective subject performance evaluation, we're safe, but it tends to be uncreative. With chaos, we have inefficiency, conflict, subjectivity, risk, but it gives us better opportunity to be creative. Yes? Okay. Now, I want to ask you a question. We don't have a poll, but you can answer in the chat box. Now, if you've been to Germany, Germany is probably one of the most systematic. If you want to see systems in real time, then you can go to any bus station or train station in Germany, and you will really see systems, real time. Okay. Now, if you compare Germany to any country, any developing country, you choose. Germany is systematic, but that country that you chose for yourself tends to be more chaotic or less systematic. Why do you think then that Germany is more creative in comparison to that country you chose. Think of all these new technologies that come out of Germany. Think of Audi or Porsche or Siemens, if you're familiar with Bauhaus. Why do you think? Because leaders, now we're getting into politics. No, forget about leaders. Leaders do not come from the moon, Asma. It's us. Yes, the question is, are we going to be discussing about sales? Yes, we're going to be discussing sales. But very important, before sales, we discuss creativity. But I'm going to discuss sales. Okay, so maybe they follow Kaizen principles, سعة الأفق, مطالبة بالأفضل. Okay. See, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to just, because we have around 27 more minutes, so I'm going to answer this question. See, creativity is not enough. Probably the country you chose in your mind, the developing country you chose in your mind, people are more creative than Germans. Probably. But creativity is not enough. Creativity is not enough. We need innovation. Now, what is innovation? See all this creativity, ladies and gentlemen, we talked about, right? If you remember, I told you my German friend faces a problem, turns the solution, solves the problem, turns the solution into a sequence of steps, a system, then documents the system. All this is nice. Then they brand the system, they give it a name, and then commercialize it. Now, the difference between innovation is a continuation of creativity. Because if you're creative and you do not turn your creativity into commercial value, it's worth nothing. It's a waste of time. So you face a problem, you solve it, you turn the solution into a sequence of steps. Then you document this system, then you brand it, then you sell it, you commercialize it, then you have innovation. Because creativity not turned into innovation is a waste of time and money. Now, somebody asked about sales. How many systems do you know for sales? Spin, I tell you, right? How many other systems you know, not necessarily for sales, but other systems that you use in your business? ISO, ITIL, right? How many certifications do you know for sales? Certified sales professional, certified inside sales, I don't know what. All these are sequence of steps, documented, branded, commercialized. Right? Exactly. There's so many, right? There's so many. In sales, we have spin, right? Like, so famous. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead, ladies and gentlemen. So it is important, as I said, to turn creativity into commercial value. That becomes innovation. If you do not turn your creativity, so people around the world are creative. The problem is they do not turn their creativity into innovation, into commercial value. That's it. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about creativity, because creativity by itself needs at least 2 days to talk about, but very quick. I'm going to ask you a question and I want your answers very quickly. You can type the answers in the chat box. This gentleman, do you think he's happy or angry? Do you think this gentleman you see in the picture here, do you think he's happy or angry? Well, I think we mostly agree that he's angry, right? Somebody says he's happy. Well, I doubt. But anyways, angry, frustrated, and so on. Okay, see, ladies and gentlemen, now I'm going to ask you another question. Please, for the next question, do not use your calculator. Do not use your calculator for the next question. I want your answer. I want to see if you can answer the next question in 3 seconds. Next question. See if you can answer it in 3 seconds. What is the result? And you got 3 seconds. No calculator. No, Muhammad is not right. 5647. No, it's around 30 million something. Exactly. Okay, see what I want to say, ladies and gentlemen here. If I can have your attention again. It's okay. I want to have your attention again. You saw the first picture. Your mind immediately figured out the answer. The second question for this calculation, the math, you needed to use your mind. Okay? Now, if I can have your attention for 2 minutes, full attention. This is very important. When we create systems, your mind goes to autopilot. Autopilot, meaning you wake up in the morning, there are some systems you follow, routine. You come back home, you sleep, next day, same thing. Your mind goes to autopilot because our mind, human mind, is lazy. Human mind likes systems, like routine. You do something once, you think about it, you solve it, you keep on doing it forever, right? When your mind is challenged with a mathematical problem like this, you need to turn your mind on. Okay? Is this clear? I hope. Most of what you do, think of yourself when you're driving your car. You drive your car from work to home, back, and vice versa. Sometimes you do not even know how you got home. You just drive your car because you're on autopilot. Most of what you do in life, you do when your mind is on autopilot. Sometimes you need to get rid of that autopilot and come to using your mind. Here, you definitely will use more energy. It's a tough job. It's not an easy job. Scientifically, it has proven that your eye pupils get wider, your heart starts to beat faster, and so on when your mind is thinking. Okay. Now, why is this important, ladies and gentlemen? Tough times break your systems. Today we're going through crisis, tough times. Your autopilot, the systems that your mind follow, some of them are broken. Okay? Meaning we are moving from systems into chaos. Not because we want to, because it just happened. Okay? Now we need to use our mind because our systems, what we followed for so long, are not working for us. So what do? we are forced to move from a systematic environment into a chaotic environment. Now, what do? We need to use our mind to be creative. Now, some of you might ask, how do we become creative? Now, I am willing to use my mind. I want to go ahead and spend some energy on using my mind. But some people are creative, some people are simply not creative. Do you agree or not? Do you think we are all, or we can all be creative? I can see your answers here. Do you think, the question is, do you think that all human beings can be creative? Agree. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, great. Yes, we can all be creative. And I'm going to tell you how. Okay, if I go back to my slides. Okay, now, again, as I told you, creativity probably needs a couple of days to talk about, but we can all be creative. It's not what I say, ladies and gentlemen. I've been studying this for the past 20 years. Okay, I can give you books, names of hundreds of books. However, I'm going to give you the summary of what I learned. See, when I ask in creativity sessions, when I ask people to give me an example of a creative product or innovation, they usually immediately show me their smartphone. Okay. Now, very nice. This is, of course, it is a new innovation. So one way to be creative, ladies and gentlemen, one way to be creative is through convergence. Convergence means what? Convergence means the following. This device that we call a smartphone, 30, 20 years ago, it was a computer, a telephone, and a camera. You put them together. Now you have a new device. So one way to become creative, is called convergence, fusion, forced relationships. Every other psychologist or speaker calls it something different. But the concept is the same. The concept is that you bring 2, 3 ideas, sometimes not very much related, put them together, then you get something new. Now I can give you hundreds of examples. I had to be hospitalized for 7 months back in 2017, so I decided to study music. First thing I did, I studied the history of music. The book was around 800 pages. The first 200 pages was dedicated to the music that human being created for the past 10,000 years. 600 pages of the book was dedicated to the genres of music that was created in the United States. Before the United States, we did not have blues, we did not have jazz, we did not have soul, we did not have rock, we did not have rock and roll, we did not have rap, we did not have R&B, we did not, and so on. So what happened in the United States? You know, the United States is a melting pot, right? People from different cultures came in, they put their thoughts, their music together, they came up with different systems, or different genres, right? I can give you so many other examples, but again, I think we have 40 more minutes, so we need to wrap this up. One way to become creative is to bring ideas together. Now, where do you get these ideas? As an individual, you need content. Content means what? Means you need to fill your mind with as much information as possible through reading, through talking to different people, through visiting museums, watching good movies, and so on. As much information as possible. Next is, in organizations, is through brainstorming, productive brainstorming. When you talk to people, you bring ideas, push them together, you come up with something new. Now, is this the only way to be creative? Of course not. There's another way, which is exactly the opposite, and they call that convergence. Now, that's this is a chair that you would buy from IKEA. Now, when we say creativity, innovation, some people think that if you want to become creative, you just have to come up with a new product, a tangible good. That's not true. I usually have a serious problem sometimes with scientists. They think innovation is when you come up with something new, a product that you can touch. There are a lot of innovative and creative people that came up with great ideas in the fields of different fields of social sciences. They are creative too. Creativity does not have to be something tangible. Anyways, so this, in convergence, we gave an example of a phone or a smartphone, which is a tangible product. Now I'm going to give you an example of creativity, but in a process. Now, this chair you buy from IKEA. Now, some of you go to IKEA and you see, and you have noticed that IKEA's products are a bit less expensive than others. How did they do that? Very simple. They brought in their supply chain, and they took off, or they took out, delivery and assembly. Simple. So when you do not assemble the product and when you do not deliver, the cost goes down, customers get better prices. Of course, they do other stuff as well. Economies of scale means they make probably millions of this kind of chips. But what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to convergence, convergence is you bring one idea and you strip it off some of its components. For example, delivery for restaurants. Now we know in this crisis, some restaurants do not have dine-in, right? So what do? They simply do delivery, yes? Meaning you just take some of the components or the attributes of your product or service out and you come up with something new, or you change, right? The other day I was talking to a friend and he told me, yes, there are some salons for dogs or whatever, right? They take dogs to do their fur or whatever, right? Okay, it's a salon, hair salon. You take people out of that equation, you put animals inside, now you have a new thing. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we know now we can all become creative. Crises like these break the routine, the systems. It's an opportunity for us to be creative. Now we know how to become creative. And as I said, with content and talking to others, we can enhance our chances of becoming creative. Now, the last thing I think I'm going to be talking about is the sales. This is a generic sales system, ladies and gentlemen. Part of my job is I go in with some organizations and I create proprietary sales systems for them. We study their environment, we see what is it that they do, and then we put whatever they do in a sequence of steps, and we create a system for them. This, what you see in front of you, is a generic sales system. Generic sales system. Okay? Now, if you have a system like this, and it's flexible, very important, flexible, you can go through crisis. Now, one thing maybe I forgot to show you, I'm going to go back with my slides a little bit. You remember when we talked about, yeah, we have 9 minutes left, so I think we have time. When I talked about systems, right, and chaos. Systems and chaos, right? Maybe I skipped something. Yes. See, ladies and gentlemen, some environments are so systematic. We gave an example of Starbucks. Now, if you're running a marketing agency, advertising agency, you definitely cannot be very systematic. You cannot have rigid systems like McDonald's. You need, because you are a creative house, you need to be creative all the time. So you need to lean towards chaos to give people, your employees, a chance to be creative. Now, sometimes we want the best of both worlds. Here, we can create something called flexible systems. It's not chaos. It's not rigid systems. It's flexible system. It's a flexible system. Okay, just an example. You go to McDonald's, very systematic. But if when you go to Starbucks, Starbucks employees are not given scripts. Like they don't tell them, say good morning. They tell them connect, meaning there's a system, something that you need to do, but then you can be yourself. Now, some parts of the world, especially in the Middle East, Starbucks employees, they wear uniforms. But in the United States, they do not wear uniform. They just need to wear the green apron. Under it, you can wear whatever you want. So you can be yourself. This is a system that is flexible. Okay, it's a flexible system. So what come now? I hope we know now the difference between chaos, flexible systems, and rigid systems. I'll go back to my last slide, which is the sales system. See, ladies and gentlemen, which companies survive crisis? Any kind of crisis. If you have rigid systems, in crisis you break. If you have chaos, your situation will be even worse. When you have flexible systems, meaning systems that have different components, you can add and remove these components easily because your system is so flexible. So any kind of crisis or tough time, your flexible system, you're going to be, I remember, you know, when we were young, I told you we used to watch like US TV shows and movies. I used to watch Bruce Lee. So Bruce Lee has something like, I think he's on YouTube as well sometimes. The video pops up sometimes. He says, you need to be like water, my friend. Exactly. So you need to be flexible like water. Water meaning with crisis, you need to have flexible systems that can adjust to the crisis. This is a generic sales system. Starts with prospecting, where you have to go look for your customers, making contact, where you approach the customer, qualifying leads. I think this qualifying should come before the making contact, but anyways. So you see if this customer is a good customer or not, then nurture the lead. You keep on coming back to understand the needs of your client. Then once you understand the need of the client, you make an offer. Of course, the client is not going to tell you, wow, I love your product. They're going to try to bargain with you. So you have to negotiate and handle objections. And after that, you need to close. Now, I want to ask you, if you follow this system, which one of these steps could be replaced with something else in this crisis? Now, we have crisis, right? Some businesses are closed, some businesses do not. Now, if you follow this system, do you think any of these steps could be replaced, combined, taken away from this process? Yes, no? Which step? You have almost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps in this system. Do you have to be there to do all this? Now, 4 more minutes. Qualifying leads. Making contact. For example, making contact personally is going to be difficult, right? So if I'm looking at my system, I can simply evaluate which part of the system I cannot do right now, and I can replace it. For example, making contact. I used to conduct this kind of presentations in an instructor-led class, right? Now we cannot do that. So what did we do? We brought technology in to replace that. If you have a system like this for product development, another system like this for logistics, another system like this for supply chain, and so on and so forth, flexible systems, you can always survive crisis. Many companies do not survive crisis because they are on autopilot, so used to rigid systems, and in times of crisis, they cannot do otherwise, and they go out of business. Like if you had a restaurant and you never did delivery and your business model did not cater for that, you're probably out of business now. Or businesses that have chaos, that have no systems whatsoever. These people do not know what to do. They used to run their businesses in a chaotic manner. Now the chaos is even more. So for you to survive, whether you have we're talking about sales or product development or anything else. Now, some people say, okay, I'm a very good salesperson and I can redefine this process or the system, but I do not have a product to sell. So the problem is with the system of product development. You need to see if that system of product development could be changed to cater for the new situation. Your logistics, your supply chain, and so on and so forth. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's 59 minutes and 11 seconds. I think we're done. Now, if you have any questions, I think you sent your questions to the gentlemen and ladies, the administrators. They're gonna send me the questions. I will try to answer the questions. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope we talk to you again.
Thank you, Ali, and hello again, everyone. We have first question from Intisar. She's saying, sorry, would you please recommend a good reference about creativity and innovation?
Good reference about creativity and innovation. There are so many books to read about creativity and innovation, but one of the books that it was a revelation to me about how the mind works was a book that was recently published called Thinking Fast and Slow for Daniel Kahneman. Thinking Fast and Slow. Read that book. It's not necessarily about creativity and innovation, but it tells you a lot about how the brain works. There are other books like Art of Thought and so on that were written like long time back, but read this as a start or for a start, Thinking Fast and Slow.
And second question we have from Anar. Can teachers be creative in selling?
Teachers be creative in selling. We are all selling all day. So we need to be creative in selling. You are, when you send your CV to somebody, you are selling yourself, right? When you're talking to people in a gathering and you are trying to convince somebody with your ideas, you are selling your ideas. We're selling all day. So we all need to be good salespeople. Now, unfortunately, salespeople do not have a good reputation. And if we had an extended course about sales, I would have told you why. Because back then, 60, 70 years ago, salespeople thought that if we want to sell, we need to cheat people. And this is what they did. And unfortunately, this reputation stuck to salespeople until today. Sales is a tough job. Most successful people, whether in healthcare, in law, in journalism, they are good salespeople. They're not necessarily selling products. They're selling themselves and their ideas. So yes, teachers actually need to be great salespeople.
Okay, one more question from Fauziya. What are saying about companies that has to put guideline for every task? Is this slowing down creativity?
Yes, it just depends on what is it that you want to do. If you have a big company, you definitely need to have guidelines for everybody. Then how do you become creative? You need to have a budget. You remember at the very beginning of this session, I told you that there are 30 major differences between the West or the developed and developing nations. I talked about one, which is systems. Now, the second major difference is expenditure or on R&D, research and development. Now, when you have a very systemized environment like McDonald's, you need to create an environment you call research and development. In this research and development environment lab, you become messy, chaotic. So this will be your creativity engine. Outside your work environment, if you're a pilot piloting a plane with 300 passengers, there's no time for you to be creative. You have to follow procedure. But companies that make airplanes like Boeing, they have R&D centers where they have pilots playing with airplanes there, where it's safe. So yes, in big organizations, you need to have systems. And for creativity, you create an entity, risk-free entity, where people can play and become creative. Like every major industry, healthcare, airlines, aerospace and defense, and so on. You cannot be creative on the job. Some industries you can. If you're selling burgers and then you decide to put some extra onion on your burger and sell it and people do not like it, you can simply stop that. Nobody's gonna die. But some bigger organizations, your reputation is involved, people's lives are involved, and so on. So you need to have defined systems.
We have the last question today from Shiam. She asking, can you suggest a creative selling tip for training companies?
A creative selling tip for
training companies?
Yes, I can. You remember, Shiam, I told you that in the West, they face a problem, they solve it, they turn the solution into a system, they document the system, then they commercialize the system, my friend. Commercialize the system, meaning they sell it. So, Shiam, you can email me. I'm just joking with you, but you can email me. I can tell you how. But yes, commercialization is extremely important. Meaning, if I want to answer this question, you need to pay me. But I'm gonna do that for free for you. But just send the guys an email, and because I think we're just gone way beyond our time. So yes, we can do that, Shiam. Yes, but I'll answer you with an email.
Thank you, Ali. Ali, that was
most welcome.
Thank you. That was informative talk. We appreciate your time and effort. Here at Vigor Enterprise, as a partner with Mr. Ali Derisavi, we would like to thank him and to thank everyone for joining us today. Please make sure to fill in the survey that will be sent to your email, and you can get a copy from the webinar summary. Thank you again from Vigor Enterprise and VDLH. Ramadan Kareem. Stay safe and see you soon all.